Hey everybody, it's Tiffany from Quilters Workshop, and today I'm doing a very special question and answer video. I received an email from a teacher and two of his third grade students in Iowa, and they are doing a research project on sewing, and so they've come across my YouTube channel, and the two girls have put together a list of questions that they had their teacher email to me, and they would like a response. And so I thought that they would be super pleased if I did a little video response for them rather than just sending a written response, because that would be boring. So they've got a lovely list of questions here, which I've already read through a few times, so I do have some responses formulated in my mind, and the rest of it will just kind of be a chatty discussion as if I have these two lovely ladies with me right now. So their first question that they would like to ask is, do I get paid for sewing? Well, I can get paid for sewing if I do a custom order for someone. Sometimes people will come and bring me fabric and they will want to have something made out of it, whether it's a quilt or placemats or a valance or something, and then they would pay me for my labor for doing the work for them. And so that's one way that I could make an income from my sewing skill. The second way is that I often do local craft shows where I will rent a booth space for either a day or sometimes a whole weekend, and I will sell a lot of pre-made items to people who come to the show, which is also a really fun way to meet new people and to also network with other vendors. And the last way that I can make an income from my sewing skill is by teaching it to others, and that's the thing that I love the most, I think, about having a skill, is sharing it with other people so that they can enjoy it and also have fun with it. The next question is, do you know any famous sewers? Well, depends how you would like to filter the word famous, because I feel like I know quite a few sewers and quilters who I would classify as famous, and these women are owners of very successful quilt stores. Some of them just own the business and they sell fabric. Others are also teachers, and some of them have teachers that come to their stores. I also know women who are editors of quilting magazines, and I've gotten to know them because I've been published in quite a few quilting magazines. So I've gotten to know editors and the women who write articles, and also some of the other men and women who have submissions in magazines as well. And then there are also some columnists and bloggers and other YouTubers that I know of who I get inspiration from sometimes and who I like to network with. So I'm not really familiar with any maybe super famous people that are known globally, like Beyonce or anything like that. But I think that within my community, or in my province even, and even I guess across Canada, I know quite a few people who I think are kind of famous in the quilting world. The next question is, do you have any sewing clubs around you? In each town, or sometimes there's more than one in each town, or sometimes in each region, there are groups of women who get together, and they're called quilting guilds. And basically it is a group of women or men who meet up each month, and they have a special program for the night for their meeting. So sometimes it can be a workshop, a demo where like they can learn something new and work on a project, or sometimes the guild will have a guest speaker come and give a presentation, and that's what I do. I get invited to a lot of guilds in my province, and I get to go and meet a big group of new quilters who all have the same love as I do. And that's just really fun, and I do get paid to do that, so I guess we can add that back to the beginning of other ways that you can make an income from sewing. The next question says, are a lot of people interested in your sewing classes? And I would say yes, because I started my business, Quilters Workshop, in 2009, and it was going to be sort of like a 8-week trial because I was in a government-sponsored business startup program for students. And so when I came to the end of my 8-week session, I had so many students still interested in taking my classes that I'm still now teaching, and I teach several classes a week all through the school year and during the summer as well. Their next question is, what are some sewing techniques? This is a very broad question, but my favorite sewing technique would probably be shirring. Shirring is basically a technique that's used for either a fabric that has no stretch or maybe a fabric that has a little bit of stretch, and you sew several lines of stitching very close together using an elasticated thread, so the thread itself is a little bit stretchy. And so when you sew all of those lines very closely together, it helps gather the fabric, and it's really useful for making the bodice on a dress because it will make it stretch, so the size doesn't have to be too accurate. I actually have a whole video explaining that, so if you girls haven't already watched that, I'll put the link down below for you so that you can have a visual and it'll help explain it a little bit better. And then other sewing techniques, I guess, kind of really depend on the garment that you're sewing, or also what fabrics you're working with, because if you're going to be working with a fabric that's very stretchy, like if you're making a pair of leggings or if you're making a bathing suit, you're going to need to use a different needle and a different stitch on your sewing machine than if I was using a fabric that does not stretch at all. And the same thing goes for weights as well. So if you're sewing a very thin fabric or a very thick fabric like fleece, you'll have to adjust the way that you sew and what you use to sew it with. The next question is, where is sewing the most popular? I'm not really sure about that, but what I do know from when I travel to different groups is that there seem to be a lot more guilds and a lot more members per guild when I travel to smaller towns or places that are more rural. However, on the flip side of things, I'm pretty sure that fashion sewing and fashion designing and people who are trying to become stylists or pattern designers are probably a lot more popular in really big cities. A big city close to me is Toronto, and I know that there is a big fashion district there with lots of shops that sell fabrics for wedding dresses and all kinds of different things. The next question is, does sewing stuff cost a lot of money? Sort of. So for sewing, there are tons and tons and tons of things that you can purchase. Little tools that maybe help make things easier, but some things aren't really necessities. So I would say that the basic things, such as pins, needles, thread, stuff like that is not very expensive. Even some sewing machines are not very expensive, but on the flip side of things, you can spend a lot of money on a sewing machine. It just depends what brand it is, what you want it to do, how many functions it has, and as well, even some basic things like scissors can be very expensive if they are a very good brand and a good pair to have. So I guess it just really depends when you're justifying the purchase of something, how much use you're going to get out of it and how interested you are in sewing. Their next question is, when is a good age to start sewing? And I'm going to say 8 because I was 8 years old when I started to sew, and when I have children register for my classes, I say that 8 is the very minimum that I will take. But it really does depend on the individual, because I've had for example, some like 7-year-olds in my classes who have a better attention span and more patience than, for example, a child who might be 9 or 10. Sewing does require a lot of patience and a lot of focus and even a lot of math sometimes. So it really does depend on you and how badly you want to learn to sew. If you really want to learn to sew, I think that anyone can do it, starting in small stages at an earlier age. The next question is, do you have to study sewing to work in a sewing business? Well, I didn't study sewing in school, mostly because where I went to grade school and high school, there were no sewing programs offered. So I started sewing when I was 8 years old by taking classes outside of school. And then when I got old enough, I started working part-time and teaching part-time in that field, and then eventually started my own business. So I would say that in terms of sewing education, that mistakes are your best friend. I think you need to learn just off of practice, and practice makes perfect. And if one thing doesn't work, then something else will, and you will figure that out just by trying. So I think trying and not giving up is the best education that you can have for sewing. And as well, even though in your email you've contacted me and sort of suggested that I'm a sewing expert, but I still learn every single day. And I think actually I learn the most from my students, because my students have different ideas for projects that I might have not wanted to make myself, but by helping them and teaching them how to make something that I've never made before is also a really good learning experience for me too. And it looks like that is all of their questions. So I hope that I answered all of your questions, and if you have any more questions, or if you have if you would like me to answer any of the questions more thoroughly, you can absolutely send me an email again at quilters.workshop@gmail.com. And if anyone else has questions or ideas for future videos, you can definitely comment below or send me an email as well. And if you would like to read my blog or follow me on any of my other social media, all of those links will be down below. I hope everyone has a great day, and thanks so much for watching. Bye!